Hi, and welcome. I'm Amanda Sidgen, and friends call me Mandy. So we are here to do a paint party together on Zoom tonight. And I have two lovely ladies that are going to join me here tonight. And we're going to do an Easter Bunny project. So it's quite easy for a beginner step of learning one stroke. These are just a few strokes that we're going to practice on the side to get the flowers down in a ribbon, and the body and the eggs are in the grass. They're all pretty simple things we're going to do. But first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our backgrounds done so that while they're drying, we're going to do some practice on some paper. So hopefully you guys brought some practice paper with you, some sort of little pad. I have this little booklet that I've got from Michaels, and anytime I'm doing any practice stroke work and stuff like that, I just keep this little booklet so it helps remind me of different classes, because sometimes I'm a student too with Donna, so you know I'm always pushing myself to learn and practice more too. So it's good to have a little booklet to keep them all in. So have a little paper there, and then also hopefully you have your pattern printed out and some carbon paper. So I sent you two of them. And one's good for a smaller canvas if you just want to do a small little one, 9 by 12. And then this one is 12 by 16. So this is for a little bigger. But what we're going to do is we're just going to add a little extra for the ears and, you know, where the eggs are and the grass is going to be. So we can always put those parts in. But this one's a little bit enlarged more. So if you wanted to do a bigger canvas, then just hopefully you'll have the one printed off that you're going to work on tonight. Okay, so we have all our colors. We have an orange, a white. I'm going to move my camera over a little bit more here so you can see my table. Pink melon, black. You could use either or camel or honeycomb, whatever you have. It's like a soft beigey color. And if you need to make it a little bit darker, you can always add a tiny little bit of burnt auburn if you want a little bit more dimension in your bunny rabbit. Okay. So we have the two greens, a lime green and a sap green. And we have a teal should be somewhere. A teal and a cobalt blue. And a yellow, and I think that's it. All right, so we have all our paints ready, but all we're going to start with is our lime green for the bottom. And then we're going to use like a teal or an aqua for the top, and you're going to mix that with some white. All right, so we can start by loading our palette with the colors that we're going to need. And also some floating medium. You guys know what floating medium is? It's just the fluff that's in the paint without the color. And it helps slide your strokes a lot easier for you because our paints are really thick and fluffy, which a lot of times we want them that way, but we want control. And sometimes when our paint is sitting on our palette, it starts to dry out. So the floating medium is an awesome tool to be able to dilute it a little bit, so then that way you can go a lot further with your strokes. And I'm going to show you examples of that in a little bit there when you see me in action. Okay, so we need a little bit of white, a little bit of lime green, and I have my aqua. And some sponges. These are Donna sponges, very well used. Whatever you have, even if you have like the little round ones, you get these at the dollar store. So you can start with either way you want. You can do the aqua first or the green first. It doesn't really matter. But what we're going to do is we're going to make sure our plate is secure in our... And also add just a titch of floating medium there. And I'm going to wet my sponge and then wring it out really good. And what I do is I dab it just a little bit on the old towel, just so that you're not getting any drips falling down. So you want to keep a little bit of that moisture in there, but you don't want it soaking wet. All right? So what we're going to do is we're going to dip one corner of our sponge with one color, and we're going to dip the other color on the other side. So when you're dipping, just try to grab one side. Then when you do the white, you're getting it on both sides, right? So right in the middle, you can start blending them together, working them into the sponge. You see I didn't clean my sponge very good. I still got a little bit of teal in there. Okay, so if you need more, you're going to add a little bit more on each corner. And just work it in until you see the blend starting to happen in the middle. Okay, so if you feel like it's too dry, then you can always add a little bit more floating medium into it, and then it'll run a little bit more. Instead of going back and adding water, we're just going to add some floating medium now if we need more moisture. Okay, so you can start at the top and just slowly work your way across, back and forth, blending it in a little softer, a little bit away. And I always like to do the whole round of the sides too, because in that we don't need to have a frame for this. It's easily to just put on a tack, it'll hang, and it's only for a little while in Easter season, and then we're going to put it away for a year. So so it shouldn't take you too long to do your background. You're just kind of doing soft strokes upside down with the green. Okay. How's everybody doing there? So you guys don't have your camera on the on your painting, so I can't see how you're doing. But oh yeah, you're doing great. Okay, I'll keep moving then. You're doing really good. Okay, so now what I suggest is flip it over. Okay, because it's always easier working your way down as opposed to trying to work your way up, in my opinion. Okay. So now I'm going to do is flip my sponge over and use the other side. It's clean, right? So we only used one half of our sponge. So we can easily just use the other side. And if you have a small sponge, then maybe you want to rinse it out and clean it. But you can definitely just use both sides of Donna's brushes or sponges. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing with the white and blue, or the aqua. Okay. I'm going to start at the top, go right around the top of my edge, down the sides. If you feel like it's not dark enough, then just add a little bit more blue. If you think that it's too blue, just add a little bit more white. Okay, and then you can softly blend that in. I find that my canvas is a little bit dry, so I'm just going to go into my floating medium just a titch, just so that I can get a little bit more blending happening. You don't want to see any dry spots, and sometimes our canvas buckles in the corners there. Okay, so it's a pretty quick background. And if you want to get a little bit more of a neater straight line, you can just flip her over again. And now I'm going to put some pressure on the edge of my sponge, and I'm going to draw a line right across my canvas. So you can see that it's a little bit more stronger line. If you like to have a soft blend, you can just blend it right in. But sometimes it's a little bit easier just to make a nice solid line. Make sure your sides are all blended. Okay. And that's it for our background. Okay. And it doesn't have to worry about being too straight, because sometimes we have hills in the background, and you know, our landscape is not always straight across. You have a little bit of texture. We're going to put some grass and stuff like that around it. So if there's anything that you don't like, we can always usually find a way to be able to put a flower on it or put some grass on it. Okay. So while that's drying, if you can set that aside, it shouldn't take too long. Can you guys see okay? Thumbs up? Okay, good. All right, so we can just rest this in our water bottle on the side or water basin, and then that way it'll keep it moist, so then it'll be easier to clean our sponge. If you leave it out and you forget about it and 2 hours later you try to wash it, then that's how, you know, it starts to dry on you and gets harder and harder to clean, which, you know, I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but I learn everything the hard way, it seems. Okay. So we should have a little bit of white still left on our palette. And we're also going to have some colors that we can play with right now just to practice. Okay. So I always find that it's easier to practice with a bigger brush and then work your way down. So this, if I was doing this size of a canvas, definitely I wouldn't be using my big 3/4 inch. I'd be using 10s and 12s. Okay, so if you're going to do the big canvas, then you can get away with using the bigger 3/4 and 16 inches. All right, so what we're going to do is dampen our brush a little bit, and then just kind of wipe it on a towel quickly, just so it's not soft and wet. And what I like to do too is I'm always fixing my chisel edge, because sometimes when we're cleaning our brushes, they end up all wonky and separated like that. So one thing that you have to do to keep these chisels really nice is when you clean your brush in soap and water and you go put it away for the night and let it dry, I always let it dry on a towel. And then what I do before I leave it dry is I squish it. Okay, so we want to make sure that we keep it nice and together, and then when it dries, it'll stay like that. If you go and leave it like this on a towel and it's all wonky, it'll dry like that and it'll start to lose its shape. Okay, so I hope that's a little helpful trick for you guys when you're cleaning your brushes, to really make sure that you get all the paint out and then squish it to get all that water out and then let it dry like this. Okay. Alrighty. So we're going to start with some daisy strokes. And really all I want you to do right now is just pick up one color. If you find your white is a little bit thick, then just add a little bit of floating medium into it. Okay. And you can practice just on the plate and see what you get there. Just kind of do little flicks on the chisel and see, is it dragging? Is it feel like it's got too thick of paint? Then you might want a little bit more floating medium. You definitely don't want too much, because then it's going to be too runny and too see-through. You won't get enough coverage. Okay, so we're just going to load up our brush. And when I load up my brush, I really push hard. You see how the paint is right up into the bristles? If you don't push the paint all the way up, you're only going to get half a stroke. When you start to put pressure onto your brush, you're not going to get the whole load of your brush. Now I'm kind of running out of white paint, so I'm just going to add a little bit more. Now the trick about daisy strokes is your brush is, however wide it is you have to double that. Now I'm going to make a big, big, big daisy. So if you want to double that, that's how long each petal is going to be. Because by the time you go to push down and then pull up, you basically 2 widths of your flat brush. Can you see that? So we're going to pretend this is the center of our daisy. Going to load up some more paint. And then what Donna always likes to do too is to do like a clock. So you're going to do the 12 o'clock, and then you're going to do the 3 o'clock. You're going to push, and then you're going to pull up just before you get to the center. Now we're going to do the 9 o'clock and push up. Oop, I'm a little bit too far away. So I got to measure here and here. So really I should have been a little closer there. So now I can just pull a little longer stroke there. I'm trying to do it in a way where you guys can see. Okay, so if you measure 2, 1, 2, this is where you're going to start. Is right at the point there, and push down, and then pull up. Okay, so now you can put 2 more. The more you push, if you don't push very hard, you're going to get very skinny ones. If you push really, really hard, you're going to get fatter ones. Okay, so it really just depends on your daisy, and sometimes it's good to have that mixture of both too. You don't, in the perfect world, our daisies are never perfect. Some are overlapping each other, you know. Some of them are a little bit more noticeable. Okay, so you're just gonna fill in now. You know, your 4 o'clock, your 5 o'clock, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Okay. And to do a really, really quick center, all I do is I use the end of my brush, and I just dot in, dab a little bit of green or yellow. I got green on my plate right now, so I'm just gonna use that. Okay, so that's a really quick center. If you have a scruffy, those are really handy for doing centers as well. And what I like to do with that is I'm going to load half of it with the green and half of it with white or yellow. Again, I'm just practicing, so we're just going to use what we have on our plate. And we're going to pounce that in to work it in. Okay, so you see how I had to put it on the table to get a really good pounce on there. So you're just blending it in. And really I've only got 3/4 of it with the green and maybe a 1/3 or a 1/4 of it white. Right, so that gives it a little highlight. And you're going to pounce it into your plate really well. And then when you pounce it into your middle, you're going to get your center with the highlights at the same time. Okay, so there's different size scrunchies. If this one's too big, then you could always go a little smaller. Okay. So I'm going to show you again with a smaller brush, which was going to be more what we're going to use for the class. Okay. So again, we're going to load up our brush. Now, not all your daisies are going to look straight on you, and they're all perfectly, you know, some of them are tilted up, some are tilted sideways, you know, so you can get a lot of different variations of your daisies. You see some are just like a side view. There are only a few petals sideways. Some I only put 2. Down here or 3, I only put 2 down here. You know, so we're going to make a little bit of variety of daisies for this project. So maybe only 2 of them are going to be really full. Okay. So also what you can do is make them shorter and smaller at the top. And once you feel comfortable with your daisy strokes, you don't always have to do the 12, 3, and 9. You can keep going. And then just have a little center dot there just to keep you focused to where you want to be. And then I go around the other way. And then as I get over to the side, I try to go a lot bigger and a lot wider. And you're going to see the result when I'm done. And we're just going to throw, oh, this one's pretty short. And we're just going to throw a little quick center in there just so you can see. And you can do a little bit more of an egg shape sideways. And if you can see the results of that, it looks like the flower's tipping up now. And the same thing will happen in reverse. So if you do your bigger strokes all at the top and your smaller ones at the bottom, it'll start looking like it's tipping down. Again, if you want it to tip towards the east or the west, okay, you're going to make most of your strokes bigger on the one side And then as you start to come around, you can come a little smaller and shorter. Can you see the difference? It's all about just having fun. Remember, the wind is blowing, you know, the petals are all over the place. So it's okay to have, you know, a little bit of movement, looking like you have movement in your daisy. You like those tricks there about how to make it face different directions? Okay, so again, if we just want to do a little bit of bud, it's just starting to come out. You know, you can always do a 3, you know, and then make these guys really skinny on the edge. Make your middle ones bigger, and then as you come out to the side of profile of your, right, and then you can always pull a stem in there. And what I like to do at the top, like that's just a little tiny line, you're going to actually put a little bit of pressure and do 2, it's almost like you're doing more daisy strokes. And it gives you a little bit more of a base for your little bud. Okay, so we can do that on the base of some of our little daisies. Okay, so do you guys feel comfortable with the 1-stroke leaf? No, not yet. Okay, so we're going to double load our brush. Okay, so you see how I got a good amount on there? And then we're going to go back and forth on our plate. Now, depending on the flower, sometimes you, again, if you've seen the ratio that I was doing earlier, there's less white, more blue. Sometimes our flowers, we want to do more blue and less white. So it just depends on how much highlight you want on your leaf or on your flower petal. I guess my floating medium is starting to run in my way. Okay, so with our 1-stroke leaf, if you visualize a line here and a line here, okay, you're going to do 2 horizontals, a little bit on an angle. You're going to start at the first one, just lean your brush over, and then I'm not even at that other point yet. Then slide to that other line. I'm trying to do it really slow. I have to learn how to do left-handed. Which, you know, they're all going to go in different directions. Okay, so it's a little bit of a point. So you're really popping up on your chisel. Can you see the angle of my brush? Add a little bit more paint. Work it in. Again, you see how low my paint is? Almost right to the edge there, where my ferrule starts. So this is the only kind of little leaf. And if they're not perfect, that's okay. As long as they're green and mixed in with some flowers, people are going to know that they're leaves. And then the more you practice, the more they're going to have a little bit more flair to them. Okay, so the more you press, the fatter they're going to look. The less you press, the skinnier they're going to look. Okay, so if you want to make a longer leaf, what you're going to do is going to slide more, and then just at the 3/4 mark, that's when you start putting up on your chisel, and then you have a longer slider leaf. Okay, and then what we can do is we can add a vein in there. And depending on if your leaf is more dark or more light, if you start your little whisk, and this is how we do our grass, is just kind of double loading your brush and doing little flicks. Okay, so it's starting to look too light. You can add more dark. Also, when you flip your brush the other way and you lead with your white, you're going to get different colors. So you flip your brush and you lead with the color that you want to see less, right? So you're going to push with the green first. You're going to see more white because your white is going to be the tail end when you start to flick out. When you turn it the other way and push and lead with your white, your last color will be your green. Okay, so we can do these little strokes into our leaf to give it the little vein. Do a little curve, get a little happy, and try to loosen up. Okay, if you don't feel comfortable with doing your little veins with the flat brush, you could always do it with a little liner brush. Okay, so you just water that down a little bit to moisten it up because it's never been used in a while. Right, and then you can always use that to do your little flick. One of my best brushes. And there's some smaller liner brushes and longer brushes. There we go, this is a good one. Okay. So you can always do your grass with a little liner brush. You can also double load your liner brush too. So what you're going to do is pick up green. See, it's starting to get thick. And I have a heater underneath my desk here, so my pink gets dried out very fast. So I just put a little bit of floating medium, work that in. So it's not a big clump, it's just worked in really well. Then I drag it through the white. So you just double loaded your liner brush now. So when you do your little flicks, you're going to get the size of your pressure. So this one here, you can get really fat grass, or if you just water it down a little bit more, pick up some more white, and just do very light touches, then you're going to get a tinier little stroke. Okay. Alright, so let's show you this ribbon now. Is everybody okay so far? Yep, thumbs up, good, good. Okay, so we want to make sure there's enough floating medium to do the ribbon, because if you don't have enough floating medium in there, it's really not going to, you can see it's slippery, it's really slippery and slidey. Especially when you're practicing on paper, because it's a lot drier. When we go to do the canvas, if you're having a hard time with your stroke dragging on the paper, no problem, because when you get to the canvas, it'll have a lot more movement. Paper is so dry, especially this cardstock is very dry. Okay, so when we do our ribbon, I'm going to start with the white at the top. And you're going to make a big C, and you're not going to be flipping your brush this way and that way. You're going to keep it in one direction, and you're going to do like a C around, and then you're just going to curve it all the way back into the center. You see that? Just make it simple for now. Just do a simple C. Okay. Then, once you feel comfortable with that, then you can always get a little fancier and give it a little wiggle. You know, so then it's a little bit more ribbony. But that's all about pressing and lifting to get that wiggle. So to learn how to do that wiggle, you'll do it more with the ribbon when we do the outside ribbon. Okay, so now I'm going to do the other side of the ribbon, and it's just in the other direction. Lift up on your chisel and then bring it back. Okay, so you can see how my stroke got a little dry there. Again, don't worry too much about it while you're practicing on the paper. You just want to make sure that you're understanding how to get that highlight on the top, flipping the ribbon over, and getting that highlight again at the top again. Okay, so this is probably the hardest part of this, is learning the ribbon. Okay, so I'll show you again. We're going out and then back in. So I'm lifting up, I'm pressing down really hard. Then just as I get to the outside, I'm lifting up and then putting pressure on it again and then lifting up again. You guys see that? You can move this little sidebar if it's in your way too to the other side, or make it smaller or bigger, or move it out of your way if it's in the way. Okay, so now just to finish our ribbon, we can just do a little side stroke like this, and that gives us our little knot in the middle. Now remember, we're going to be putting flowers all around this ribbon too, so any parts that you don't like, we can always stick a flower or a leaf on it. So in a way, this was probably the hardest technique to try to do, is the ribbon. But once you get the hang of it, it is actually so much fun. So what we're going to do is we start at the base of our knot, and we're going to go sideways a little bit to start our ribbon, so then it's nice and fat at the base. And then we're going to pick up our chisel, go down a little bit, and then over. I'm going right over my daisy. Okay, and a little bit over, and pick it up, and then down again. It's a little bit dry, but I'm hoping you guys are going to see that if you don't like the very tail end, you can always just wisp it back in. It's almost like that one stroke leaf. Okay, so that just gives it a little bit of movement, how your ribbon is moving. The more we practice this, the better our ribbons will look. Okay, so you're also going to practice the other way. You can always go over here and just try to practice the ribbon by itself. So a little bit on the side, and then pick up your brush, and push down, pick up your brush, and then you can do that a couple times. Once you get the hang of this, then you can start making your ribbon a little bit different, you know, where you're dragging a little bit longer, and then a little bit of a lift, and then just a small little tail. So again, it's how you feel about the ribbon. Maybe one way it's flying and it's a lot longer than the other two. I'm going to change my paper here for you. Okay, so sometimes they're you know, a little bit flight away shorter. Then you can make the other one a little longer. Maybe it's flipping in two directions. If you really want to make an advanced one, so you're going to start up on your chisel, start dry paper, and then maybe it flips to the other way. Okay, you guys catching that ribbon? It's all about pressing and then pushing and then popping up and then pushing and then popping up, and you're doing it a little bit on an angle. So you're starting on an angle to get and go sideways, push up, flatten, Does my hand make a nice palette? I'm just trying to make sure that you guys are seeing what I'm doing and not confusing you in the process. So you think you can handle the ribbon? You guys can unmute yourself now. Oh, there we go. Unmute, unmute. There you go. Now you can talk to us. What do you think so far? Am I going too fast?
What size brush are you using for the ribbon?
That was a 12.
The 12?
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, if you're doing a smaller project than that, like test your sizes. Try a 10, try a 8, and then you'll see the size that you achieve with it. And then when you go to the canvas, then you'll know which size of ribbon you want to do.
My ribbon's a little weird. I'll show it to you.
Yes, please. You gotta talk while you show.
Oh, can you see it?
Hey, no, that's not bad at all. That's great.
And I'm actually comfortable with the one stroke leaf. It's the wiggle leaves that I end up with a big gob of paint in the middle. Not that we're doing those, but
no, that's okay. I can always show.
I'm more uncomfortable with. The one stroke one is I think is
when you're doing one of those leaves, I'll tell you quickly what it probably is you know, when you're loading your brush, sometimes we only need to reload more white. And if you're reloading both colors every time, because the light, whatever color is going to be the outside, is going to move more than the inside.
Okay.
So you need more floating medium and more paint on the side that's moving more.
Okay.
So when you go to pick up the inside color, where you say you're getting too much paint buildup, don't pick up as much.
Okay.
And then sometimes we can just go and reload in our paint, like when we go to blend it out. That's sometimes enough just to freshen up the one side. Okay. But then we need more white or a lighter color if you choose to do the light on the outside. Mm-hmm. And when you blend, you're really only adding on to the one side. Okay. And if this side is too dry, then I don't put my whole brush into the medium. I'll only put a tiny corner of the side that I want to extend.
Okay. Well,
that way I only have the one side that's more runny.
Okay.
And does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah, anything I can help with. If you feel like you want to throw in a leaf, then just use an 8 or a 10, and then it's going to be a little smaller. And then you can always put a couple of full leaves in your design today too. And there's no rules. Just because we have a project and I sent you a picture, it does not need to be exactly place for place. Just because I have, you know, these 2 leaves here, well, maybe yours can stick out a little bit more. That won't hurt. You know what I mean? You're gonna make it your own creation by the end of it, and that's okay. So you can see how this ribbon here, I hardly see. You hardly even see the bow. Okay. I wasn't happy with the way it was looking, so I put a flower right on top of it. You know, so there's no nothing that's really going to be hurting too much. And also, as we get going, I'm going to show you some tricks how to remove it before it sets. So then that way you can erase it and then try again.
Okay.
If you're using the multi-surface paints,
yes,
they are amazing for that. Because once they're dry, you can paint over it and wipe it off very easy. If you're just using the regular acrylic paints, they tend to wipe off. You're going to wipe off your background.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that's why now when I buy paints, I don't buy too many of the regular ones. Because then it restricts me too. Then I'm only stuck with canvas or paper painting.
Well, we have some problems finding some of the multi-surface colors in our area. We live in a real rural area.
Where are you, by the way?
Franklin, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow. Right on.
And it's rural here. We had to go all the way to Erie, Pennsylvania, to try to find some of the colors.
Right. Yeah, some girls will order right from Plaid, and then some, like if I can't find it at Michael's, a lot of times they're sold out on all the popular ones.
Yeah.
I have to order them from Donna, and then I'm getting the extra shipping from Florida. Of course, I'm in Canada,
Right.
and it's like it costs me $50 anytime I want to order anything, just
Oh my
shipping.
goodness.
Oh yeah, I had like a half decent size box. We can see this is one of her standard boxes.
Right.
That's about $50 to ship to Canada.
Oh my goodness.
Well, maybe it'd be about 35, 40 US, but then as soon as I change it to Canadian funds, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be one of the bonuses for you guys. When you take my classes, I'm charging $30 Canadian. You guys are paying American,
Oh yeah.
so you get a little bonus there.
Yeah. Well, when we went up to Erie, it was a girls' day out anyway, so it was just kind of a fun day.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to get a better camera. As I get going, I'm learning, right? And then I'm going to start investing more in my technology. And it's been a real challenge in a way, learning all this stuff, like even how to put videos up and stuff.
Oh, I'm sure.
Like, I'm an artist first, IT guy, photographer, videographer.
Well, as we discussed on the phone, I'm no good at the computer either.
Yeah. So I'm learning. I'm getting there. I
Yeah.
just need a little better tripod.
What Canada are you in?
Yeah. So if you guys want to
She couldn't.
trace on your backgrounds now, we can do that. And then we're going to take a little bit of a break. So if you want to continue practicing making more daisies on paper, then definitely you can do that.
Okay.
And practice more ribbons with different size brushes. Then when we come back from break, then we'll start working on our bunnies. How's that sound?
Good.
Good.
Yeah. I haven't even got a clock in front of me, so I don't even know how much time we've been on here yet. But I'm just going to stop the recording now, and we'll come back for part 2.
So we'll go ahead and trace the bunny?
Yeah. Yeah, you can do that if you like.
Okay.
Okay, I'm just going to stop the recording now. When you're tracing your bunny on, try not to push too hard on your lines, because when you're doing some lighter colors, sometimes it's harder to cover those with the lighter colors like yellow and stuff. You'll still see that dark pencil line underneath. So with this, really, you don't have to outline the flowers or anything. You just have to outline the bunny, and then we can place the flowers where we want. So we're going to put the ribbon in there, and his top of his head, and his ears, and then this ribbon is kind of hiding some of the hat. So if you just kind of make a little bit of a hat and put the rim in there, you can kind of guess where it's going to be. And then you can fill in the lines very easy. So you want to do the bottom of the hat, and definitely his face. And again, you don't have to worry too much about little hairs and stuff like that are hanging under his hat. You can just put them in yourself. So we'll just put a little placement in where his eyes and his cheeks are. We're going to base coat this with white again too, so you're going to cover some of this. Oops, my bunny fell. And tape your guy really good. Okay, so let's see how that goes. So his arms and the top of the basket. You're going to have some ribbon there, so you're going to not see all the basket there. So just give you some placement here where his feet are going to go. And you don't have to worry about too much about the eggs, you know, because if you did the larger one, you know, you're going to have to pencil that in a little bit. So you can just take a quick peek to see if you missed anything before you take them off.
I may have made mine too dark.
And plus my carbon paper is a little bit old now too, which is good because then it doesn't come out so dark.
Mhm.
You know, so I keep them and I use them again and again and again and again until I can't see anything from them. Alrighty. Alright, so I went and got a new plate because we're going to put more colors and you might have, you know, took over your plate with practicing and doing your background. So we're going to start with our white and camel, or just a white for now, but we can put the camel on there too to get it ready. Camel is a little bit darker than the honeycomb, but both are nice. Like I said, if you want to make it a little bit deeper, you could always add just a very titch of burnt umber. I couldn't find these two soft colors in the multi-surface. I had to pick them up in the regular acrylic.
We found the camel in the multi-surface, but not the honeycomb or honey. Yeah, honeycomb.
I can hardly hear you.
Oh, we found the camel in the multi-surface, but we couldn't find the honeycomb in the
Yeah, I think one of them is only in the regular acrylic.
Same thing with the sap green. I couldn't find that in the multi.
Yeah, they do have it.
we looked up.
Thicket will work too. And if you ever want to make it a little bit darker, just touch just a small amount of the burnt umber or maybe a tiny little bit of black, and that'll deepen it a bit too. Okay, so what I want you to do now is, because of the green and the teal in the background, it's not going to make our white really pop and the colors really pop really good. So what we're going to do is we're going to base coat a little bit of it, but when you get close to the lines, try to be a little bit more see-through so you can kind of see where your lines are.
What size brush are you using?
Right now it's a 12. Okay, so I'm just kind of like filling in the spots, and I'm not really doing a good job because, like I said, I want to kind of see where my lines are underneath. If you don't see them again, if you don't see them after, then you can always put your bunny back on and retrace your stencil and to put your details in. But just try to just stay really soft over the lines so you can kind of see them, because you're going to go over them again with the outlining when we start adding some caramel, or so just very, very lightly for now. Just enough to start a base coat so that it doesn't look so teal and white. Is going to cover a little nicer when we do the we add the caramel. Okay, so you're going to go right over the face. And just like I said, very lightly, because you don't want to lose your lines. You don't have to worry too much over the cheeks. That's going to be a good strong color. And kind of making little circles there just so that I can kind of see where they're going to be. And his feet. And if it gets a little dry, just add a tiny little bit of floating medium, and that'll give you a little bit lighter color. forget his other ear. And just add to it a little bit of a point if you did the bigger one. Okay. How you guys doing? All base coated? You could use a 16 if you wanted to too for this outlining part. A bigger brush will make it go a little quicker, but you don't want to use a 3/4 because when you get into the smaller corners here, it's going to be a little trickier for you to spin your brush around. So I wouldn't go any bigger than a 16. So we've already got the white already loaded into our brush, so we could add a little bit more. And you're just going to side swipe into your camel or your honeycomb, whatever it is. Because you really don't want a lot of camel. You want more white than you do. So once you go into your camel, you can back up a little bit so that really you're only getting a tiny bit of color on the edge of your brush. Can you see that? A little bit blurry. Right. So we can start highlighting all around the edge of our hat first. And you're just going to use the dark all the way around the outside of the top of the brim of the hat. Okay, so you can see you're getting much better coverage the second time when you go over it.
I haven't got my base coat done yet.
Oh, okay. I'll slow down a little bit.
Sorry.
Yeah. How you doing, Kim?
Getting there, not
Not the largest one, the second largest one. If you have it handy, or you can do it with the round brush, or the flat brush too.
okay. Now I'm wanting to put a little bit of camel on the corner.
Yep, so you're loaded with white, and then you're just going to side stroke into your petal so that you're just catching the edge of the white so that you've got like more like 75% white and maybe 25% of the dark of the camel.
And I'm just going to go across the top of the hat.
Yep. And then you're going to go down. Once you go across, then you're going to continue down into the top of his, inside of his ears there. So you're just going to make a little line all the way across the top and then follow it down into his head. And to give yourself better coverage, what I do now, right, if you guys want to take a look for a second, you're still got your brush double loaded, but what I do is I tip my brush sideways so then only the white is hitting. I can kind of sneak in a little bit more coverage there just using the side of my brush. Did you see how I filled that in?
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm just holding the brush on the side and filling the rest in like that after I did my outlining. So it just gives you a little bit more coverage. Then we're going to do the bottom of the top of the hat. You're just going to go around like this. And you're not even going to actually see this because it's going to get covered with flowers. But just to get it in there so you know, and if there is little peaks of part of the hat that is showing through, then you're, at least you know you're covered. So if you're not getting a good coverage and it's not sliding to give you, go right down to your point, you don't have enough floating medium in there. So you just have to add a little bit more floating medium to your brush. Okay. Then we're going to go underneath the brim of the hat. You can give it a little bit of a bend. Try to see your line underneath, hopefully. And then we're going to go around our ears. Basically all around the outside of the body. So just to remind you about the ear part, we're going to do the outside pink. Okay, so we want to keep it lighter on the top of the rim of his ear. So you're only going to shade the top part, and then you're going to leave this part white. Can you see the bottom part is white? So you can turn your brush around and just try to use the outside of your color. Okay, so you can see that I kind of faded it. So you want to bring the shading a little bit further down for the top of the ear. Okay, and we're going to keep the underside not done yet, so we're going to put the pink in there. Okay, so now we're going to do the other side of the ear. And then to get this nice and white, you're just going to dip that one corner into the white and then follow that line all around where the pink goes. You see that? How I got the white a little brighter there? Because once you start mixing back and forth with your white and your camel, you start to lose your intensity of the white, which is okay for shading. But then you want just the rim of the top of his ear to be really white so that it stands out. Okay, so now we're going to go underneath the hat and around his face. And you can go right underneath his hat. So you're almost doing a double shade with very little bit of camel. Because there's always a shadow underneath the hat too, right? So you can just put a little tiny shadow underneath the hat. So your shadow is going in two directions. Okay, so once you run out of paint, then just go into the white and just fill in the rest of the hat. So it's okay if he's going to be like a little bit softer white in there, because we're going to put the wicker into him now too. Now this particular camel I bought was very thick. You can see how thick it is. Sometimes I'll pre-mix a little bit of floating medium in an area, because if it's too thick, it's not going to blend very well. So some of our paints get old. I'll put a little bit of floating medium and stir it in there and get a nice little pot here that's already nice and blended and a little smoother. So sometimes that happens too, especially when you're doing the bigger rolling leaves. So what I do is I just pre-mix a little bit of this thicker paint because he's really thick. Can you see the blobs in there? He's really too thick. So if you find that, just work it in a little bit with some floating medium. Then when you grab your white and you side load into this new puddle now, you'll get a more workable paint. Can you see the difference?
Mhm.
So that's another little trick when you're struggling, when you're not getting a good flow, is because maybe your paint is too thick. And sometimes our white comes really thick. So if you're finding that it's hard to get it to run, just soften it a little bit before. Instead of adding your floating medium after and then working it in, you could also pre-soften your paint a little bit. That I had to learn on my own. That wasn't a Donna trick. Okay. So we'll finish off doing around the face. And then we're going to work our way around the arms. And I find if you want to do a little bit more dimension, you can always add like a little bit more burnt umber over this again, like in certain areas, if you wanted it to be a little darker in certain areas. Okay, so when you're doing around the little hands, you're just going to do it all the way around the bottom, then stop it at the bottom, reload your brush, and then start in the other direction and do your little C like that. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to do all the way around the outside first, all the way to the bottom, run out of paint, reload my brush, and then I'm going to start in the other side and work my way around here so we can hold on to the basket. Okay, so now I'm going to do his feet. Okay. So you see how I just fill in the middle there on the edge of my brush? Just keep following it around until you run out of paint. Then go the other way because you still have a little bit of paint on the other side. And then you should be able to get all the way around his foot in one swoop. Alright. So we gotta go underneath his face a little bit too. So again, we're gonna do that reverse shading. So you did it this way around his cheek, but then you're gonna do another little shade underneath his cheek. And up underneath his nose area. And then again underneath his cheek and all the way underneath his face. So you see how the benefits of having the shadow going on both sides of the line kind of gives it a nice soft look, eh? Okay, and then we're going to do the bottom of the basket. And then just above his feet is the top of the basket. And then just fill in with a bit of white to brighten up those areas. You can still see the green through. Like I said, if it's a little bit of dirty white, that's okay. Now I'm doing this crooked here. They're not exactly the same, then that's okay. Did I lose somebody?
Oh, I'm here.
No, I'm here.
Okay. I just heard a doorbell there. Okay. Alright, so again, fill in a little bit around the top of his face there. You don't have to worry too much where the cheeks are going to go. Just to give it a nice light color. Now that we can see where our lines are all shaded in. Every time I do these, they're never exactly the same as the last one I do, I swear. But like you said, this ear here, I have it open, but this one's tucked behind the top of the hat. But this one here, if you notice over here, I don't even see the bottom of his ear anyways. So if you made your line all the way across like this, don't worry about it because we're going to put some other stuff on top of it anyways. And we're going to do the wicker, and you can see how little is actually here. But we're going to fill up the whole thing just to give you practice, make sure that you're comfortable with the technique. And then, if, like I said, you don't know where little spots you're going to show through. So as long as you get a little bit of highlight showing through here and there, it's going to give you the illusion of some wicker. And the same thing with the basket. So we're going to start at the top first. And then by the time you finish the top, you're going to be a pro. And then by the time we get down here, because you can see more of the basket here. And there's a couple different ways of doing this. I found the easiest way, as I'm going to show you, is just doing some stripe across sideways, and then we're going to do our stripes after in a brick pattern down. Okay, so whenever you guys are finished all your outlining of your body, I will start with the brick layering of the wicker. And we can also, actually, what I'm looking at now is you can also paint in the handle of the basket. Okay, so it's going, you want to have a little bit of a highlight there. So you want, whenever you're doing highlights, you should always have the light on the top and the darker color on the bottom. So basically you're almost going to do like the ribbon. So you can just start off very lightly and then go up around a little fatter and then down a little bit. Mine's a little squarish looking there. Okay. Then I'm going to flip my brush around and I'm going to go over it again so that we get a little bit of texture going on there. A little too much floating medium on there, so just dab it off if you have a little mistake there, if you don't like. So this is probably the easiest way to do it. So you're going in both directions, right? So you're going on the outside of the line, and then you're going on the inside to give it a little bit of a basket there. Okay, and then again, we're going to put some grass and more little tiny ribbons around there. That's probably like an easy way to do it. I did get a little fancier with my top there. I tried to get like a double line going on there. It's whatever you feel like you can do, right? And how I did that is just going through it again and just putting that little second line in there in between the two. So if you're having a hard time with the 12, move down to a 10. Then you might be able to get these smaller strokes in there a little better. Okay, so wherever you think you want your eggs, you can always kind of white them out now while you still have lots of white in your brush, just so they're a little brighter when you put the yellows and oranges on them. And one is going to lean into the basket a little bit. And then we got one laying a little towards them there. And this one's laying sideways. He's kind of behind the front guy. And so just start some placement for your eggs. So I forgot to throw in his hip. So I lost some of my line. There we go. So just throw that in there quickly there. Rick, just go over it again. Move down to my number 10 for the basket, probably. So whatever size you're using, you can just move down one size. So your line that you started at the top, if it's not dark enough for you, you can go over that again. If you're happy with it, you can move down just one brush stroke thickness down. And you're going to do another stripe. Right? And then again another stripe. Now remember what your little blue ribbon is going to go in there too. So like I said, don't worry about it too much. You're basically just doing three stripes in there. Okay. Then what we're going to do is we're going to do little strokes down. So we want to have a little bit of this fade showing through each side stroke down that we do. So to get them evenly apart, it's sometimes easier if we put one in the middle, put one at the edge, like that, and then it kind of splits it in threes for you. Then you can put another one in the middle there, and another one in the middle there. Then when you move down to the second row, we're going to brick layer them a little bit. So don't worry about too much about what's not covered there. So we're going to put one in the middle there, one in the middle there, and one in the middle there, and one in the middle there. So it kind of brick layers them. And then your third row, you're going to do like the top row. Do one in the middle, one on the edge, and then one on each side to fill it in. And so it's just the illusion of bricks of the wicker hat, right? Then we're going to do some more rows. We have our first row, first highlight already done. So we're just going to move down one brush thickness all the way around. And then I go from this side to this side, all the way to the point, to the corners. And you can move down a little bit. And I try to join my corners a little bit. So you're feathering off from the same point, and then you're just coming a little wider, and then you're feathering into your original point again. So there's going to be a lot of flowers on here, so you won't even see most of this. And then one more. You can kind of follow a little softness of the hat. And then again, we're going to do our sideways. And just space it out. And then try to go in between. So the rim is going to be a little bigger on the last one. If you lose your little shadow underneath your hat, you can always just put that back in. Okay. So you want the light at the bottom and the shadow right at the base of the line there. And as if it's not giving you enough definition, you can always highlight it a little bit more with some burnt auburn in there too. I have it on my palette, but I haven't used it yet. So again, if I just wanted to deepen that brown a little bit more because it's getting too wishy-washy, I'll add just that tiny little bit of spot of burnt auburn, blend it into my camel, and then it'll show up a little darker. So you just want it very subtle. You don't want it like dark, dark brown. You just want to use the burnt auburn, just a little titch to, if you're losing some of your dimension with your white and your camel. Okay, so when we do the basket, sometimes my brush gets so wonky and lost its dimension. I just clean my brush, start all over, get a nice white again, go back into the side load, and then it'll be a lot brighter for you again. Okay, so start off fresh again. Sometimes we have to do that if you're not really stable on going back and forth in the same spot, you'll end up with a little bit of a muddy mess. So it's really important to try to stay focused and stay on the same area all the time. So when we do the basket now, we're going to do like little happy faces. So that it gives it more of an illusion of a round basket. You know, looks a little different than the hat. Okay, so we're just going to follow that shape of the top of the basket. Just down a little bit further. And keep going all the way down. As many stripes as you like. If you're using a 12, maybe you'll have one less stripe than I will. I'm using a 10. And then one more here at the bottom. Okay, so don't worry too much where this egg is going to be. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing there. We're going to start in the middle, over to the side, and over to the side. And try to do like a little bit of a C, like not too straight up and down. Try to make them a little bit more of a soft C. And then the two in the middle. And then over here. And just keep going down with your bricks. Lost some of my weight there. Do this part here, but then you can just go over it again. If you get some brown onto your egg, just pick up a little bit more white and clean that up a little bit. Your ribbon and your little, you know, whatever color you like, but what I do like is how the dark blue kind of pops with the teal, and there's so much pink in the ears and his toes that I felt like I didn't want to use pink in the ribbon, you know. So I do like her idea with the blue, but you could make that purple if you wanted to. That might stand out nice. Okay, so I'm going to start loading up some of my colors. We need the cobalt blue now. We need more fresh white. We can start putting our dark green and light green out. And try to spread them out, you know, around your palette so you have enough room to blend in between. And I wouldn't worry about the yellow and the orange until the end, and then you can pop a little bit of that in there. Just get the leaf colors out, and some white, and blue, and pink. We'll do his ears and the ribbon of his hat. And I find just putting a little bit of each color is all you need for now, because you don't really need a lot of each color. And then, because you don't want to waste your paint, because I'm so cheap, I end up scraping it out and trying to put it back in my bottle. So definitely, what I had to learn through time was just put a little of each, because if you put too much, it's too hard to blend, and then you run out of spots in your palette to
Okay.
work, right?
What color green are you using?
I have the lime green and the sap green or a thicket. Okay, so I try to put those two together, so then that way when I'm blending my two greens together, and then I try to keep an area so I can blend my blue and white together, and then I try to keep another little area that I can side load into my pink and pink melon, or my magenta. Okay, so first we're going to do his ears. So again, you can stick with your 12 or your 10, whatever you feel more comfortable with. Okay, so again, I'm about half and half. Okay, you can put this one. There's two ways of doing it. You can do it like this, or sometimes Donna will put all white, and depending on how dark you want the color. If you want the colors to be really rich and separated, then you can always put them aside, or you can pick up your white just on the side of your puddle and then go over to your pink and side load into your puddle that way. So it's whatever you feel comfortable. Sometimes it gets too messy, so I like to have a little area to the side to blend. Right, so then that way you're not picking up too thick, because you want to start in your puddle and then you back up a little bit. So then that way you're not picking up too much paint. So it depends on how you feel about that one.
And what color was it again? We were using white and
Pink melon and white.
oh, the pink melon. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so if you notice on the original, it's actually darker underneath the rim of his ear and then lighter more on the outside. Okay, so it looks a little darker in there, so it looks like a little hollow in there. So the first thing I do is start lining the edge of his ear. Okay, and then you can tilt your brush up the other way at the top of the corner, and you can go it out a little bit down here and down here. But mostly you just want it to be a lighter pink on the outside. Something like that. Okay, and then this one I made a little bit more of a fancy flop on his ear, so there's a little bit more hanging over. Try to make them a little different, right? And then while we have our brush loaded with this pink, we're going to do his toes. And really all they are is like little teardrops, and they're not even closed really at the bottom. Like you see a little bit of an opening on the bottom, and then the bottom one is a full circle. So what you're going to start with is your bigger one on the middle, and then you'll do 2 smaller ones on each side. Okay. So it's just like a teardrop. You're just going to push up and then pull back down. Okay. So now this one's a little smaller. So you're just going to push up and pull back down. Is everybody okay with that? You can practice on some paper if you like first. And then this tiny little toe here. Okay. So we'll do these parts first. And just so I make sure that you're comfortable with that. Because then the bottom part of the toe is going to be a full circle. Okay, so you definitely want a 10 or something smaller if you're afraid that it's going to go too big. Practice on a paper if you like, just to make sure that you're comfortable with doing your circle. You're just going to put a little side pressure on there, and you're just going to spin around in a circle. Okay, if you don't get it all finished, that's okay, because you can start at the top and spin around the other way. You see that?
Okay.
Do you want me to do it again?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we're double loaded our brush. Okay, start up, standing straight up and down. Just a very slight pressure sideways and turning it around into the circle as far as you can. Right, until your body just won't let you do it anymore. Then you just start at the top again and work your way the other way. Okay, and that's how you get your little circles.
Okay.
And basically you can do the cheek the same way as well if you don't have, or if you don't want to use this. But it does make it quite fun and easy to do with this too. But with the cheek you'll use a bigger brush so that you can get it to spin around the size you want. Okay? Alright, so we're going to do the bottom one now. And just try to stay tight to that circle. Start in the middle, work your way around the other way. Okay, so like I said, you could do your cheeks this way too, you know, and have your cheeks done with a brush. I'm just going to spread out a little bit further. It's the same brush I'm using. You know, you could do it that way. I find this does take a lot more paint because you have to really load it well. So I'm cheap, and if I can do it, you know, another way, I will. But if you like to learn how to do these, and just sometimes it's good just to moisten them just a tiny little bit so then it doesn't suck up too much thick paint. Again, very, very little, so you can barely feel the dampness on there. It's not dripping, and it's just a little bit moist. Our sponge, really good with the white. You see that? Then when we go into our pink, we're just going to slide a tiny little bit on the edge. You see that? So we're going to work that in all the way around and just spin her around on your plate. Okay, you see how that works?
Okay.
So when you feel like you got enough paint in there, then you just do a little bit of a pressure and a tiny little bit of a spin, and voila.
Huh.
It's a tiny bit bigger, so you gotta do both the same. So I can go right over this guy. And there you go. Okay, so if you don't want so much, my other little cheeks were actually more, less white in the middle, so you can work it in a little bit more. Right, so maybe I just didn't work it in a little bit more. Spin it around a little bit more. And then you can go over it again if you want. Just spinning it a little bit. And you can see now they're a little bit more pinker. I keep looking at my original trying to make them the same. Okay. So you can play with them until you get happy with that soft little cheek mark. And remember to put your sponges in the water right away so that they don't dry out on you. Okay, so I'm just wiping off the excess paint, picking up some fresh white, and then I'm going to go right into the magenta now. And it's just like a little half circle from the cheek to cheek. Okay, so you can color that in a little bit more. Right, give him a little nose. And then you can go a little bit around the inside of his cheeks with your magenta that you have on your brush already. Just follow that highlight, so you're just deepening the cheeks up a tiny little bit underneath his nose. You see how that's making it a little bit darker now with the magenta? While you have that in there after you do your nose, just kind of go over your pink melon just in the center there.
What is that?
And that'll give him a little bit more shading. So before we do his eyes, we're going to get the white and the camel back out again. So because we're just going to add some hair now underneath his hat. And you can do that with your strip liner. Just water down your paint a little bit so it's a little bit more wispier. Especially my thick camel I have here. I have the camel loaded up in there. Then I'm just going to go and just do a little quick swipe to pick up a little tiny bit of white on my edge of my brush there. And just give him some wispy hairs. Some are a little thinner, some are a little bit thicker. And then around his face can go a little bit longer. Okay, when you start running out of white, you can just go and pick up just a tiny bit more white. And then if it's too white, then you might need a little bit more of the just little wispies this way and that way. And try not to go too low because we still got to get his eyebrows in there. So I do them after the eyes. So if you want to add just the tiniest little bit of black, don't need lots at all. Because that's the only place we're going to put black is for his eyes. So just the tiniest little pea is more than enough.
On the script liner.
Yeah. So again, if your black is thick, you might want to add a little bit of water. Just enough. You don't want to add the water to the whole black puddle, just a little bit to the side. Just make a tiny little bit to the side. Just to make it a little bit more runny, so then that way you're getting a little bit more looser stroke. Not too runny, not too thick. And just so you can, you can make little strokes. And with the eyes, it's actually just kind of dabbing. It's not even really making a perfect triangle, and it's not really a triangle. It's more like a gumdrop. It's a little bit softer round around the top, and then you're just going to dab in the sides. And we're going to put in a tiny little bit of white to give him some highlight after. Okay, so he's got some hair in his eyes a little bit. That's okay. And just like a soft little gumdrop, and you're just kind of tap, 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 tap it in. If you see a little bit of space in between, that's okay. Alright, so you're just going to fill that in to the top of his cheek. And trying to get them, similar size. Okay, so we really need this kind of like inky so that we can make his little eyelashes. So definitely make sure you practice on your plate a little bit and try to make little thin lines. And if it's not doing this for you, it's too thick. Okay, because you really just want to use the very tip of your brush. And you see how long this is lasting me? I can do all of his eyelashes with what's on my brush right now. Okay, so if you make it inky enough, you'll be able to do it. Okay. So sometimes it's hard to get one side of his eyelashes done this way, and then you gotta flip your hand the other way. So I have a hard time getting both eyes exactly the same too. But if you flip your canvas around this way, sideways, or on an angle a little bit, you'll be able to get them. I'm trying to see if you can see me here. So I always start in the middle of the lash and then work my way down a little bit, and then you want some long, some short, some long, and then as I finish the bottom, then I go and I finish the top. I always get a little better shape if I start in the middle of the lash. So just starting in the middle, and then if you feel like you need a little bit more flare, you can always add a few more. Okay, so again, it's easier to pull towards you than try to pull your brush away from you. So I'll always turn your canvas so that you're pulling towards you, and you'll get a much softer wisp as opposed to trying to flick it the other way. Does that make sense? And then just fill in some short ones and some long ones. Take a look at both of them. If you feel like you need a little bit more length, then you can always make a few longer. Work in your eyes a little bit. So we're going to do the eyebrows in the burnt auburn. And And if your hair is hanging down a little low like mine is, you really want to make these very translucent, just like the black. Really water this brown down. And test on your paper or on your plate to see how your stroke is looking. Because you really just only need a very light one. You don't even need it like really dark brown. You just need a little bit translucent. Okay, practice both eyebrows. Practice this direction and this one. Okay, and you don't really want to make them too dark. You just want to make them a little bit softer. Really like a watery down brown. Oops. Little mess there. So again, you just take a clean brush, wipe off your little oops, dry it off. No harm done. And then a little bit of pressure in the beginning of the eyebrow, and then a little bit of a point at the end. Okay, and it might be a little easier if you turn your easel a little bit or your painting a little bit, and then do it the other way. Okay. So at this point, if you feel like you want a few darker pieces in your hair, you can always add, because you've got the brown in there now, you can always add a little bit more darker hairs on top of your eyebrow that you just did. When you put the highlights into your eyes, what I like to do is try to copy whatever I'm doing on this side, I'm doing on this side. So it's not opposites, it's on the same side, because the light that comes in, that pops off of your eye, will look the same on both eyes. Depending if the light is coming in this way, is the light coming in this way, you know, so the sun will throw different shadows and highlights. So what I usually do here is just like maybe a little bit of a half or a third of a circle, and just in little dots. And then I do the exact same thing over here. And then on the top of the eye, I only put like 2 tiny little dots. So you want the highlights on the top of the eye smaller than you do on the bottom of the eye. Okay, and it's just little dabs. It's nothing really too precise. So I'm just grabbing a tiny little bit of paint on the end of my brush. 1, 2, 3. Oh, not strong enough. And then do the exact same. And then on the top, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. So what do you think of that face so far? Pretty cute, no?
Very cute.
I'm going to send you an invite as well to my group. And if you want to post pictures on my group of how your work turned out, that would be wonderful. If you want to throw a little review on my page of how you felt about my class, that would be wonderful too. Yeah. Okay, so you can see that it's still a little bit light under here. So if you want to add some little shadows underneath his cheeks a little bit more to define under here with the camo, you can always add a little bit more under there too.
Oh,
Because I made my cheeks a little bit bigger, so it kind of hid all the shadow that I put under there. So you can just pop that shadow back in a little bit, just follow the line with the camo if you want to. You can play and add little more dimensions as much as you want. If you want to make the little rim of his hat a little darker, you can always take the liner with the burnt umber and just try to put like a tiny little, you know, shadow line in there. Or you can actually double load your brush and just kind of go along it very softly just to give it a soft, deeper shadow. It looks nice with all the bright colors anyways. You know, just giving you some ideas that if you wanted to play and try to get more dimension.
yeah.
Okay, so we've done the eyes and the face. Now we're going to put the blue into the hat for his ribbon. Okay, so again, I'm going to pick up mostly all blue and just a little bit of white, just to give it a little bit of dimension there. Okay, mostly blue, and then I picked up the white and I brought it back over to the area where I was. Okay, so sometimes we side load into the puddle. Okay, so I'm going to put my highlight on the top of the hat rim, and this is a 12, so you can use a 10 if you want a smaller rim.
Okay.
Okay, and then we're just going to put a tiny little ribbon at the top of his hat. Okay. A little bit of an angle. I'm going to go over that again, just put a little bit more of an angle in there. Okay. And then we're going to do our ribbon on the side of his one ear. So you want to make sure you add a little bit more floating medium into this. So then that way it can go all the way around your ribbon. So some of our ribbon is going to sit over our bow. That's okay. And so just about, halfway through his ear, I'm going to start my ribbon. And pull up and then under. And if I didn't get enough coverage or my white isn't intense enough, then I'll go over and I'll pick up just a little bit more white, blend it in, and then just before you're ready to paint, I'll go and pick up just a tiny little bit more white again, and I don't blend it this time. So then that way you'll get a little bit more stronger white line, because once you go back and forth you lose the intensity of your white. So just before you make the stroke, I just go pick up just a tiny bit of white. My white is starting to get a little bit thick, so we can go right over that again. If we're not happy with it, just follow your original line and then back in. Okay, so like I said, when your white starts to get too thick, it makes it a little bit hard. So either you have to put a little bit more fresh white on or mix some floating medium into it, and then that'll soften it again. Okay, so it'll blend a lot better if you have some fresh white. Around and under and towards the center. Then I'm going to do the other side. And you can go a little higher if you want. And then inside. Sometimes I feel like it's just the bottom that didn't get good coverage. So you could always just slide right in there, put your pressure in, and then lift up. And I just fixed the bottom part. Okay, it's almost like a rose there I made. Okay, so you can just make that a little bit more even. Okay. And then we're going to do our little knot in the middle. And from here we're going to do our ribbon that just lays on top of the rim of the hat. So I just kind of made it a little bit of a soft, little wiggle. Then the other one on the other side, it kind of flows away. It's a little longer ribbon. Okay, so you can make that a little bit hanging off his hat a little bit. If you don't get enough coverage, just go over it again. Add more paint on your brush, and then try to follow your original. So you can go flow right off his hat. Sometimes you end up wrecking your little bow in the knot in the middle. If you go into it, it doesn't look good, just go over it again. So then that way your knot is actually sitting on top of your ribbons. So they're tucked under again.
Okay.
Okay. Alright, and while we have some blue on our brush, we can always paint a couple eggs blue. So I just mix the white in there because I want a good solid blue. So I don't even bother cleaning my brush, I just pick up a bunch of blue. So one of our eggs is going to be blue in the background here, so we can kind of just put in almost like a half egg there. And just try to make them tucked inside the basket a bit. And then we can make the one by his foot here. Alrighty. Go and clean our brush a little bit and paint the rest of our eggs, especially the ones in the basket, because we want to add some decorations to them later, so we want to make sure they're good and dry before we add the little white details on there.
Okay.
So you can go and add some orange and yellow to your palette if you want to a little bit. Whatever colors you like in your basket. They don't have to be the exact as mine. And I can even put my magenta one over here for a change. Just want them to try to stay in the basket. Make it a little bigger. And then I'm going to let that dry a little bit before I put the another color on top. And we'll stick the other magenta one over here. So again, like I said, you only need a very little bit of orange and yellow. I tucked a little bit of yellow in the background of one of my corners here just to make it look like there was a little presence of another egg in there. And when I do the yellow one, I get the yellow in there, and then what I did was I just picked up just a tiny little bit of orange on the corner, just to kind of highlight the yellow a little bit. Just so that it's a little bit more depth to it. It's a little bit too much orange, but you just go over it again with your yellow. So it just kind of makes it a little bit more dimension there. And then I made the other one a lot stronger orange. And then you could even add a little magenta in there too if you wanted to shadow around the orange egg. The big guys in the front, they don't have to be decorated. You just leave them plain because he hasn't got to them yet. He only decorated the ones that are in the basket so far. Orange is hard to cover on top of blue, so if you just add a little tiny bit of white to your orange, then you might get a little better coverage. And then let that dry, and then you can always go over it again with your brighter orange once it's dry a little bit, just to kind of base coat a little bit. Alright, so I just base coated that mostly just to get rid of that blue there. Okay, and then while I'm doing the leaves, that's going to dry. So when we're ready there, to clean your brush, and then we're going to load the two greens, and we're going to add just a little bit of white in there to lighten up that green a bit more. Not too much, just a little bit. And then we can start placing some leaves here and there, and try to visualize, you know, you're going to leave spots where your flowers are going to be. So we have a couple sticking out behind the flowers, right? So this one here, I ended up hiding that whole leaf, but you know, that happens sometimes. So we're just going to try and place them in spots where we know we're going to have the tip of the leaf sticking out. So on the side of his ear, we can put a couple leaves sticking out that way. My paint's drying on me. And if you want a little brighter green, you can always add a little bit of yellow into that green as well. So I'm going to put one straight out right underneath his ear. Then the second one is going to have a little bit more of a tip down. And then I tip my canvas over to the side so that way it's easy for me to put one down. So it's going to hang a little bit lower down over his hat. Or her hat. Okay, so that's some good placement there. Then I wanted one to kind of pop up, but I put it in this way, so what I should have done was put it towards his ear. So that way I can put the flower on top of it. See, you learn as you go. Like every time you do it, you think, oh, didn't like this, I like that. You know, maybe next time there's plain shopping bags that you can buy. And if you wanted to make gifts for your kids, you can buy all the chocolates and put it in one of those little gift bags and paint your Easter bunny on the gift bag for them. And they would love that, you know, having something that, you know, aunt or mom or grandma or whatever made for them that's hand painted and something they can keep. They can bring all their, you know, snacks to school or their books in it, or, you know, they're not necessarily shopping kids, but they still love bags to throw all the toys and carry them around. And, you know, when they're visiting family, they can pack their stuff in the bag, in their own little bag. So that's quite a cute little idea. So this one here above, on the other side of his ear, I'm going to put it up a little higher than my original. Again, because I learned the hard way by putting my daisies there. Some of them can be a little darker, some of them can be a little lighter, like some might be more yellow, some might be more whitish green. You know, it's okay to have, because some of the leaves are starting to die and some of the leaves are fresh. There's brand new little leaves, so they're going to be a little brighter with orange or yellow in them. Okay. So then we had a couple more leaves that we did underneath the ribbon. So you can put one right there. And then I put one going the other direction, hanging a little bit more over his eye. And then I put one more in front of his ear on an angle down. And then another one angling down. And again, you know, you can always put a few here and there, however you like. And that should be pretty good for now. You see the placements? And then while we have the green on our brush, we can put in a few grass strokes. Again, you want to make sure you have enough floating medium in there so that they really slip and slide, make them really thin and wispy. I like to start with the white side down so that when I flick up, my light is going to be the last to show. So you can start off along the side of his body a little bit and just do little flicks. And then wherever grass is going to pop out, right? And some down here at the bottom. I kind of get my placement going all in one direction first. Then I'll flip my brush around to get a different color combination to add a few more. A few more up here. Is he's squishing the grass when he sits on it, right? So he has to kind of like bulge some outside of him. And some just tiny little flicks here and there. Maybe a little one here. You just fan them out. And then I'll go back in and I'll add some yellow into it now to make it a little bit different. And then I flip my brush around again, so now I'm starting to get a little darker with the lighter. Just keep going and picking up some fresh dark green and some floating medium. And some grasses are going in different directions. Some are a little fatter. You can press down a little stronger to get a little fatter one every once in a while. This is the fun part. Just have some, little wispies here and there. Pick up a little bit of white. And add a couple light pieces here and there. Something like that. Have fun with it. I'm not even looking at the original. I'm just kind of having fun. Before we add the grass to the that's inside the basket, I suggest that we decorate the eggs first. So we'll have to come back and double load our grass a little bit later. So we'll just clean our brushes for now. And if you want to go over that orange that's in this basket, make that a little brighter, that would be a good time to kind of brighten that up. And then while we're doing our flowers, then that'll be dry. One with the daisies, so if you've been using a 12, go down to a 10. If you've been using a 10, go down to an 8. I find the daisies are easier with a little smaller brush.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to try even an 8 here. because I have a tendency of pushing too hard. So if I use a bigger brush, then it'll be too fat. So if I use a smaller brush and I push down a little too hard, then they're not so bad,
Okay.
right? So with the daisies, I always think one size smaller.
All right.
And it depends. Sometimes you want your daisies to have little tiny. These ones I did make a little fat because I did make them with a bigger brush. But they'll all look good. Okay, so we figure out where we want to put our two. Right, so right now the edge of this ribbon is not very nice, right? So I'm going to try and be strategic so I can cover that part of the ribbon that I don't like.
Let's see what
Okay, so I'm going to figure out where I want my center. So just put a little dot there to keep you focused. Make sure your white's not too thick, not too runny. Again, you're going to measure your brush width. So it's there and there. So you want to start at that point right there, push down, and then pop up very quickly. You can go a little wider if you want, but not smaller. So you want at least two widths of your daisy, so that when you start at the top, you're pushing in the middle, and then you're picking up by the time you're at the bottom.
Okay.
Okay. And then to keep you focused a little bit more, you can do the 12, 3, 6, and 9, and then fill in the middle if you like. Sometimes it's hard to do your daisy stroke, pushing from the bottom and flicking up. And if you do have a hard time, then I suggest just keep turning your canvas. So that way you're always pulling towards you. And you just keep spinning, spinning, spinning. And then you'll get the consistency there. Okay, and then I'm going to put another full one right at the bottom of my ribbon. So I'm going to do 3. Then I'm going to flip my canvas upside down to do the 6. Right in the middle of those 2 leaves. And then you can do little thinner ones too. Like I said, if you make them all the same, drop my canvas, right out of the room. It just makes them a little bit more interesting when your petals are all different. Okay. And then we're going to put a couple over here. So I always do the middle one first. Then I do each side and each side. And over here, you can even do another full one if you want. Oh yeah, we did do a couple more. And then we can do another one over here by the ear, a half one. And then I stuck a little one over here on the edge. You only see his side profile. And another little one tuck under here. Or something like that. And for the centers, all I did was use the back of my brush with some nice clean bright yellow. I just did some simple ones because they're a little smaller, so you don't need to have a lot of detail. But I like making them a little bit more egg shaped, like sideways eggs. Not a perfect circle, just a little bit of an angle sideways. And then depending on which way I want the illusion, you know, sometimes you can put that little bit of an angle on different directions. So you see that when it's up and down here, it makes it look like it's going that way. When you make your little centers oval, you see how it makes them look a little bit more unique when your centers are not all the same shape. Like they're all ovals, but they're in different directions. And then maybe just a little one showing there. And a tiny little spot might be showing here. And maybe a little tiny spot showing right here. But you see how the centers, when you make them a little bit different, that really adds to the play of it tipping this way or that way. So they don't all look like they're exactly the same. Okay, so while we're on the white, we can get our script liner out and add a little bit of water to our white. I'm going to keep grabbing my old script line. So we're going to decorate our eggs in the basket. And we don't have to go crazy with detail. Like, I probably did a little bit more than Donna. You know, I tried to make some straight lines, some circular lines, and then, you know, some little zigzags with some dots, and just a simple line with some more dots. So it's not really extravagant decorations, just all with white. It's just something simple. I'll show you Donna's original. Okay, so she even actually went even more subtle with the details on the eggs. So it's up to you what you like to do. That's her original. And when you make your line, you make it a little bit fatter on one side and a little bit more narrower on the other side with a little bit of an angle. It looks like it's actually on a round surface. And then the bottom of my egg, I'm going to make the stripe the other way, a little bit of on an angle. And this one I'll get a little fancier and do zigzag. And then just some dots. Just simple. And we're also gonna, while we have our strip liner, we can also make a really inky thicket or sock green, whatever you have. And we're gonna add a few curly cues coming out of our flowers.
Oh no, really cues.
Yeah, you want to practice a few of those on paper first?
I probably should.
Yeah. The harder you try with curly cues, the worse they are. Really, I think that when I finally got my head around just trying to keep a looseness to my touch, because when I was trying too hard to make every little, then they were, you know, looking like I was trying too hard. You know, you're pushing too hard, and most of the time I didn't have enough water in my brush as well, so really, really inky. Donna recommends you go to your water basin 3 times. Add a little, mix it, add a little more water, mix it, and do it 3 times, and then you should have enough water to make it very inky. And what you do is just kind of rest your pinky on the page just very lightly, just so that you have some stability. Your brush is going to be directly up and down, so that when you're making your little squirrels, I'm trying to do it standing, like holding up my brush here, but hopefully you'll get an idea of making sure that you're down the brush too, because if you got too much play, you're gonna feel awkward. You're gonna really feel like you're going like this. So you come a little closer to your ferrule. That's what they call this little steel part here.
Okay.
Then you'll have a little bit more. You won't have to stretch your fingers out as far.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you're a little bit closer, like as opposed to a lot of people think that they're okay like this, but then you gotta really tighten up your curling process. So I find when you're a little closer, then you have more room to hold on to your with your pinky. They call this like a fulcrum finger, so it kind of keeps you grounded.
Okay.
And then you can do a few circles, and then you can go the other way, and then out again. You know, some you can just do Yeah, I don't know if you can see how I just made that line a little bit stronger because it was a little bit wishy-washy there. So I
Okay.
just went in there again with the white right on the edge, a little bit of camel, and made sure it was runny enough so that I get it and go slow, and then you can get a nice strong line there.
Okay.
So yeah, anything you don't like, you can always go over again.
Mhm.
And of course, you have to sign it.
Yep.
If you wanted to add a little bit more dimension to your background too, you could take a tiny little bit of your darker green and just floating medium. So you're just going to use green on one side, and I need to add a little more floating medium. I'm trying to find a clean spot on my plate. And you're just going to put mostly floating medium and just a little bit of green. Can you see how small amount of green I have there?
Okay.
And a little bit of floating medium, so it's really a little bit runny. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to float a little bit of background line right along my light green. And you can see that it's a little bit dry. Where am I? There you are.
Okay.
Okay, so that shows me that I don't have enough floating medium.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm going to just add a little bit more floating medium. A little bit more green. And when I go over it again, nice and slow, if it's wet enough, it'll look like a little bit more of a solid, clean line without seeing all the canvas little bumps in there. And then don't forget to go over to the side of your canvas too. So you see how that kind of makes it a little more of a horizon?
Right. Yeah.
You don't want it to be like a hard line, just a little bit of a shadowing there.
Mhm.
And when you do it just with the green and the floating medium, you're not changing the underground color.
Right.
You see that little trick with just floating medium in one color?
Yeah. That's a good one.
And then you can go over here and do the same on the other side. Just because I'm noticing my background wasn't as dark green as my other original was. So just a little trick to kind of add a little bit more of a horizon kind of line. And then you can always go back and forth, just adding a little bit of depth into it. Whatever's left in your brush. Just enough to, you know, kind of play with it. You see the little streaky marks I just added?
Yes. Mhm.
Yeah, just add a little bit more movement into the grass in the background. Yeah, I think that looks pretty cute compared. You know, you can do this 10 times and they're all going to look slightly different.
Oh, sure.
You know, and then like I said, the first time I did it, I'm like, oh, maybe I put that ribbon a little too low on his head. So the next time I did it, I tried to go a little higher.
Uh-huh.
You know, so you learn as you go too.
Right.
Because the first time I was really copying Donna. So then I'm like, but I don't like that. So I want to change it a little bit. So you're allowed, right?
Sure. It's
Like you're gonna get a chance to paint this again, maybe another time on another canvas for somebody else, or maybe a T-shirt, or like I said, a gift bag. You know, that really makes really cute gifts around the holidays. You're gonna learn every time you do it again and again. And then every project that we have too offers more, you know, harder strokes and a little bit difficult, and then it also helps you to learn the ones that we did last time and just make them better. You know, so that's my goal too, is that I'm going to have a variety of stuff so that you'll keep enhancing your technique.